Hey there, Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. Let's talk about the root problem of kids not being able to stay on the ball as they're learning the game. And I've found some things that I want to share with you. I work with a lot of kids, and I want to share with you that I've recognized with kids that prevents them from staying on the ball. And of course, this problem is we can't draw conclusions because high school players may have a completely different reason for not staying on the ball. But I found that this can also affect older players as well. But first, going to start off with this exaggerated movement Alex Bregman's talking about. Then we're going to jump to a kid that's in my current program working a drill that I would recommend for this. And we'll use Mike Trout as an example for something here in just a second. So let's play this out and listen to Alex Bregman, one of my favorite players on the planet, talking about an exaggeration that he has to feel.
Everybody knows that naturally your body is going to turn and you're going to end up like this at the finish, and everybody just sees that like, oh yeah, rotation. Well, for me personally, I never ever think about rotation at all. I think I have two flashlights right here on my hip pointing that way. I have them on my shoulders, on my hips, on everything, my feet. And all I am trying to do, the only thing I look for is when I load to have my hands travel high across my chest forward like this. The knob of the bat, get out there past the inside part of the baseball. I am trying to do this while keeping everything facing directly that way. Now, of course, it's not going to happen, but that's how my brain has to think in order to stay close and not spin off the baseball.
Yeah, so it's an exaggeration, right? And I love this idea, and I've tried in the past with young players to kind of talk to them about this idea. And one of the things that I learned is kids would take me literally, right? Oh, you don't want me to turn my body, and that's not what Bregman's talking about here at all. And one of the things I also learned is you can talk to high school players about ideas like this that have really good body awareness, and they will respond in some way to this, just like Alex Bregman, who obviously has really good body awareness. Understanding the how and why you're doing something is really important for it to actually reproduce in a performance environment, right? So I had to figure out a way practically to take this idea, right, because I love it, and share it with kids. And so jump over here to a player that's currently in my Fundamental Perfection program. Him and his dad are doing amazing work. And this kid, it's not easy to have a kid come into my program and want to do all of the monotonous drills and feelings that we work on. But when you have a kid that really wants to do it and he enjoys working with you, that's number one, a credit to the parent for creating an environment where it makes it fun for the kid and they can enjoy the experience. I think that people that have a difficult time with my program, and of course there are difficulties here, I think they think that the program is trying to solve the problem of hitting, and kids do not develop well in environments like that where you're trying to we're trying to fix this thing that's broken in you, kid. There is no such thing. Development lasts for years in this game, and you never will solve the problem of hitting. Right? It's just not going to happen. And this dad creates that space. And actually has the most difficult job of physically getting the player to translate the ideas that him and I are collaborating on along the way. So all credit goes to him. And thankfully, he's letting us use this video publicly so other parents of young players and coaches of young players can maybe take something away from this, and it might help you, right? So what I've learned about kids that have, obviously this player we have been reestablishing, I think it's critical for players that if they want to have adjustability as they grow in the game, that the arm hand barrel unit plays a role in this directionally. And why I say that directionally is because what kids start off with, and I would agree with most people, well, you can stay out of the way of the natural patterns that kids use like this. And I understand where that comes from, that what kids are doing that are learning the game is they're creating instant centripetal force with their wrapping the bat and using their body as a catapult to throw their arms in their hands. This works really well in coach pitch. If you've got a really good coach on the bump that can throw balls at kids' bats, this pattern of movement will create a 50-pound kid can put 100 pounds of pressure in a ball. I'm making some of this up, but that's what I look at when I see a kid doing this move. I don't just go, oh, that's wrong mechanically. I know these kids can run into some balls. Problem is there's no adjustability. And one of the things you want to do fundamentally with kids that are learning is teach them adjustability, right? What does it mean? I mean, the lowest common denominator to being a good hitter, right? Of all the things that happen in a baseball or softball swing, I have to be able to put the bat on the ball, right? And if I have no concept of what the hand-arm barrel unit does, right, and I'm not saying it does everything, I'm just saying if I don't have a concept of it, I'm probably not going to be have adjustability as I grow in the game. So we've already, at this stage in the program, we've already focused on some ideas to try to get him to think about more lag being generated directionally, and when centripetal force should be a thing is that as we work down the line, naturally centripetal force should help us as we throw the energy, but I don't want to throw centripetal force right now, right, because I will have no direction. Okay, so we're learning that. But what I want to show you today is what I've learned about kids that, obviously the arm-hand path and how he's using his body to throw his arms and hands play a big role in him not being able to stay on the ball. But with kids, what I learned is when they take on this pattern, no matter what you do with their arm, hand, barrel path, and whatever, right, that what they drag is really a problem from the ground up. We've kind of done a terrible job on YouTube, I think, myself included, in making drag seem like it's a one-arm problem. Right, and people that get into my programs and work with me online, they learn that it's not really a one-arm thing. I don't have like tons of top hand drills. I literally have one top hand drill. What we're trying to do with kids like this is we're trying to create better balance in the working mechanisms as an understanding, not as a complete goal, but as an understanding that, hey, the bottom hand arm on the bat, it can do equal amounts of work as the top hand as you're learning here. And because when you watch kids, if the hand and arm that's the most leveraged position and closest to the length and the weight of the bat, what kid is not going to use their dominant arm to steer the direction and basically throw the energy? Well, that's what the top hand arm is doing, right? It's not malfunctioning as a problem in itself. It's doing all the work. So my goal with players fundamentally is just trying to give them a better balanced approach and understanding the both bottom hand arm, top hand arm, and then as these players grow in the game, they're going to obviously develop into more top hand dominant, or they might be a Mike Trout, and like he says, he's more bottom hand dominant. That's up to the players that grow in the game. Fundamentally, the best thing I can do as a teacher is give them an understanding of what the balance of both of those working mechanisms are, because then I start creating, at least a pathway for understanding what it means to be a gap-to-gap hitter, right? Without having this basic concept, right, you're probably not, you're going to really chase your tail trying to give a player a basic understanding of what gap-to-gap style hitting is, right? So we've worked on the arm hand, but from the ground up, right, these problems still exist. Everything that players do to compensate, this is what I think of when I watch kids from the ground up. Now, not every kid has this same pattern of movement, and in fact, this is a guarantee that this player is a pretty athletic kid, and the way that he's using his body from the ground up says, I'm trying to create explosive energy. There's no doubt about it. But one of the characteristics you'll see with kids is immediately before their hands even come close to getting out of the top of the swing, they throw their back heel, ankle, calf, all of this into external rotation. That's a useful mechanism for what they're doing. I'm not saying it's wrong for what he's trying to do, but this problem continues to persist because if you think that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, it's going to work its way up to here, and this front shoulder is going to respond to the external rotation here, right? The body is symmetrical. The front shoulder is going to respond by pulling out this way. And the problem is, in their learning, they've learned to turn the bat on this axis. This is what a lot of people mistake that kids chop down and they need to learn to swing up, I guess. Believe it or not, if you haven't heard that before, that's really a thing. That's not a problem with kids. They don't naturally swing down on balls, right? If you're using this as your axis of rotation, which most kids are, right, they're probably going to have a tendency, and you're not going to see that in this swing, right, but they're going to have a tendency of going across and going down because everything's going to follow the axis of the turn, right? So it's not a chopping down like some of us were taught growing up, right? Certainly not on purpose, and you don't want to just take that player, that's the root problem. Oh, you're hitting down, you need to learn to swing up. No, there's something else you missed, right? So it's this external rotation, what I've learned to fundamentally get players to try to feel and understand in order to control their body from pulling off. So we'll jump over here to my man Mike Trout. I love Mike Trout, man. I call him my man. I don't know him. But watch this rep of Sean Casey throwing a flip from the side. All right, now number one, this is not a game swing. Right? This is really important that people understand. Somebody will say to me, well, this isn't like his real swing. And I could go on for hours about that topic, but I'll bore you to death. if I'm not already doing that. And this isn't a game swing, but I'm convinced that if we would spend more time watching professionals practice, okay? If you spend more time watching them practice, you'll actually start understanding how the body wants to move. Like, for instance, a lot of people will say things like, and this is not a straw man argument, okay? A lot of people will say that the arms and hands don't really do anything, that the body is doing the majority of the work, and there's connection that the arms are attached to. But if you watch somebody like Mike Trout or any pro at this level, right, in a controlled space, somebody's throwing 5 mile per hour underhand, right, you'll see independence of the arm hand barrel unit. Right? Like literally the arm hand barrel unit is moving here, right? There's no doubt about that for anybody that's being honest, right? He's literally using his arm hand. And you'll also see in a controlled flip like this, there's no requirement for external rotation of his backside. He didn't have to pinch his knee in order to hit a ball flying in sideways. He didn't have to do something. He didn't pop his heel off the ground in order to start moving the bat. His arm hand barrel unit says, you know what, we're going that way. And I want you to watch this, and this is how we're going to, I think, hopefully draw the parallel here of what I'm going to try to finalize here in a second. But by controlling this external rotation here, right, and a ball coming from the side, right, the heel just, for Trout, just comes straight up. And then at the point of contact, you start seeing the heel and ankle rotate over, almost like a golf swing as late as this is happening, to be honest with you. Right, but why is this happening? I don't think he's thinking about not rotating his heel, but ball's coming in sideways, right? So he's trying to stay, and there's a strong correlation between this and the front side of his body. And you say, well, his body's turning. Well, really think about this in relationship to kids. Anybody that's ever thrown side toss to your kid, just think about this. You never see the sternum pointing in this direction. You certainly don't see their pelvis pointing in this direction at the zone, right? Every kid, even throwing side toss to them, they turn their hips totally and completely down the line this way. And they turn their sternum sometimes towards the shortstop, right? And that's the opposite of what we're trying to feel. And a ball flying in sideways anyways, if I don't know how to stay on this, I'm probably not going to stay on anything, right? So it's the external rotation of this that I'm trying to draw your attention to, right? There's a direct correlation with kids that the more external rotation they get back here early, like most kids do, and I show in my program with some of my players, is as they're moving their hands, right, just to do this to there, right, just that little movement, they feel like they have to turn this around. Or they feel like they have to do something with this whole leg in order to move that. And that's not a thing. There is no correlation between what's doing with the arms and hands and what my back, leg, and foot are doing. Right? So now that we've talked about this, I want to show you this drill that I work on with kids. And it's obviously an exaggeration, just like the Bregman idea is an exaggeration. We're not going to go to the plate with a bat between our feet. But I found this as a practical way of getting kids to understand what Bregman's talking about, without them thinking, oh, I can't turn my body, right? So the drill here on the right, now this player has a better understanding of what the arm hand barrel unit is and does, so some people may not have success with this if this is your current approach, right? But we're challenging him, hey, when the arm hand barrel unit, that's the one mechanism in the drill. The other mechanism in the drill is the actual squeezing of the bat between the arches, okay? Now that happens, the squeezing and the arm hand barrel unit taking off happens simultaneously. As the player begins to launch, I want them to feel that. Now that feeling can only last for so long, right? And it's this phase of swing from here to here that I'm trying to get a player to feel that. Now why I'm doing that exaggeration, right, is that ultimately I found it controls this external rotation, right? Instead of immediately spinning this leg and rotating this over, right, the player is staying grounded here. But notice how his back heel is coming up, right? It's coming up. We're not trying to stay stuck in the ground. It's coming up. But notice the limited rotation here on this side. Well, this guy stays here longer, right? Stays there a little bit longer. And then you're going to be very hard-pressed to find kids, right, in this age group on a tee that have their chest and their sternum pointed at the zone. Maybe not at the ball. I don't know how many of you grew up in an environment with, like my dad thought the body didn't turn at all. The body turns, right? But we're trying to make sure that it's turning for the right reasons at the right time, right? So that I can be ultimately more explosive and I can adjust across the zone, right? So this player is doing amazing work with that. And that's what I've learned. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can be creative and you can take this idea maybe and do something else, a whole other drill. Some of you guys are really good about that. But this is what I learned from kids is that there's a direct correlation between the turning of the ankle and the back leg that feeds its way up to the front shoulder, right? Then that needs to be rooted out. And then at the end here, this goes back to, if you wanted to do a drill like this, the basic ideas of the previous video that I made talking about players' natural athletic balance and leverage points is something that I think is one of the most important things to do with a kid fundamentally. If you teach a player from the ground up, if you train them like an athlete, their natural athleticism instead of a robot, hey, your knee is supposed to do this leg should feel this, and this foot should do this, that just creates robotic mechanics, right? What you want to do with kids in this age group is you want to make sure they're using their natural athleticism and leverage points from the ground up, and you will see just something as simple as what I showed in that last video. If you understood that concept, the kids will be more efficient. Now, it may not look like a perfect, pretty swing all the time, but they will be better in just understanding their natural balance points. You can see how much more range of motion a player is able to create by just having a basic concept of what their body's relationship is with the ground, and that's something that we do in the online program. So hopefully this helps. Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. Thanks.